Now let's take a look at user inputs. So I'm going to go back to the Marin Maker page, and I'm going to grab this starter code, inputs and string manipulation. And I will fork it so I have a copy of it in my account. And then we can get started. So Python lets you ask a user to input data. It isn't always hard-coded. So the first part is going to ask the user for an input, and then we're going to create an output using that input. So let's ask the user their name, saving it to a variable. So I'll say name equals input, and I could just leave it like that. And before I just have an input, I could print what's your name. So let me try that. And the input is now here at the bottom. So I can type it in, and since that's all we've written, that's all it does. However, that's 2 lines of code, and we like to be efficient. So I could get rid of this print and instead, inside the input, put the prompt. What is your name? Now, when I put the prompt inside the input, it won't leave a space. So I type my name right after this question mark. So I could either leave a space, or I might want, like what I saw the first time, is to have my name or the input show up underneath the question. And in order to do that, we're going to add a new line. So inside our prompt, I'm going to use the \n, and that will create a new line. And I don't need to leave a space here. It won't be visible in what we see. So let's just try that. Looks the same. And of course, I type in and hit enter and nothing happens because we haven't coded anything else. So let's go ahead and now print a greeting. Say hello. I could use the plus here, remembering if I'm going to use the plus to keep a space. Or I could have used the comma, but I'll use the plus right now. So let's run this again. And there it goes. Now, if you wanted to be really nice about this, in our previous video with strings, we looked at built-in functions like title, so that even if they typed their name in lowercase like I did, it would still turn it to uppercase for the first letter. So let's try that. And there we go. That is part 1. Now let's go to part 2. We're going to ask the user for an input, and then with that input, generate multiple outputs. So we're going to ask the user for a number, saved to a variable, but we want that number to not be a string. Well, how do you know it's going to be a string in the first place? Let's take a look. So I'll name my variable times, because I'm going to print I love cake, the number of times that the user puts in as this number. So input, enter a number. And then I can print the type of times, which will tell me if it's a string or an integer or a Boolean. So let's try this. I'm going to turn off both of our part 1s. Okay, so let's take a look. Enter a number. I will do 4, and it tells me it's a string. So inputs automatically, whatever the user inputs, it gets saved as a string, but I need it to be a number. And before I tell you why, let's try using it as a string. So I will print I love cake, and I will print that the variable times, and then I can use multiplication. So I want this to print I love cake 4 times if I enter the number 4. So let's see if this works. 4, it's class string, and then I get an error because you cannot multiply a sequence of non-integer of type string. So I can't multiply them together. Now, if I added them, let's see what that does. It put 4 and it added it with I love cake, just like concatenation, regular concatenation. And that's not what I want. I want to print cake 4 times. So I'll put our print back to times. And instead of just leaving it as an input, I'm going to wrap my input question inside an int. This will transform my the user input, which is a string, into an integer. So let's try that. Enter number 4 of class int, so it's an integer, and then I get I love cake printed 4 times. Of course, there isn't a space after cake, and maybe I don't want it all on one line. Maybe I'd like it on a separate line. So let's do a backspace n, or backslash n. And now I have I love cake 4 times. Let's move on to part 3. Part 3 is going to ask us to get a user input, to combine the user inputs to form silly words, and then output the results. So we're going to ask the user for 2 words saved in separate variables. So word 1 equals input is enter a word. And then word 2 will be the same. And then I can combine them and print out the result. So word 1 plus word 2. Let's give that a try. Enter a word. Happy. Dogs. Happy dogs is what I got as my word.